Hey everybody, Crow back again, and it has been a long time, hasn't it? It's been over 10 months since the last Williams Pinball pack was released, but on October 20th, 2020, Zen Studios released Williams Pinball Volume 6 on all platforms for Pinball FX3 / just plain old Williams Pinball. And before I go any further, I need to say that I did receive this table pack for free, and I will be focusing on the Steam version, but I think on all platforms, this table pack will run you around $9.99 US. And in this video, I'm just going to be talking about an overview of this table pack. I will have separate videos for each of the tables in this pack, which includes Dr. Dude and his excellent Ray, Space Station, and Funhouse. But for now, I just want to talk about the table pack as a whole and what I thought of it. So before I start talking about the tables individually, I just want to kind of do an overview of Williams Pinball in Pinball FX3 because it has been a while, but also maybe talk about why this table pack took so long to be released. There's been really no official explanation for that, but I think it's due to a couple of things. The first is obviously there's a worldwide pandemic that's been slowing things down. That's certainly a possibility. Secondly, Zen Studios does like to release these table packs on all platforms at once. So basically they're slowed down by whichever platform takes the longest to get these sort of things updated to. Because obviously, like on platforms like Android and Steam, you can push out these updates a lot quicker than you can on the consoles. There's a little bit more red tape and costs associated with that. But thirdly, and I think this is the biggest reason, it has to do with the fact that all three of these tables in this table pack are pre-DMD tables. This is a first for Zen Studios and Pinball FX3. And I think it's been hinted at many times, at least from what I've seen, that it was these alphanumeric displays and getting them to look and behave just right is what was really causing the bulk of these delays. And I'll talk about them a little bit more later, but man, they really do look good. So as with all tables in Pinball FX3, you do get a couple of main modes. You have challenges, you have single player, and you have what's called classic single player. Now, the difference between single player and classic single player is actually quite significant when it comes to these Williams tables. And it may not be very clear, but the single player mode runs on completely different physics than the classic single player. In single player mode, you have the classic Zen physics, and you're allowed to have power-ups and score multipliers and everything applied. Whereas with classic single player, the physics have been altered for these Williams pinballs to try and be more realistic, and man, you could really feel the difference. And I much rather prefer to play in classic single player. In addition to the fact you're not allowed to apply those score enhancers or power-ups like the rewind feature or the slow motion feature or score multiplier feature. And also in classic single player, you can adjust between an arcade mode and a tournament mode, which uses the same physics but kind of slightly alters the rule for the table to be a little bit more difficult for the tournament setting, and I think maybe even the pitch is adjusted. And as I mentioned before, all three of these tables included in this pack have alphanumeric displays pre-DMD, and I think Zen Studios really did a fantastic job applying them to the game. They really look good. They flicker in some aspects, and they don't look the same for all three tables. They really went out of their way to make sure they looked almost as realistically as possible. I mean, right now you're looking at a comparison of all three of them, and you can really tell that they are acting and behaving just a bit differently from one another. So of course, with all the rest of the Williams table, you can play these tables normally as they would appear in real life or with the touch of a button. Add enhancements, which add cartoon characters kind of jumping around the table, add extra visual effects and you know, sidewall art and everything to spice up the table a little bit more, to do things in a video game format that you couldn't do in real life. And we'll talk about a little bit of what these enhancements add to each table as we talk about each table, which we will jump into now, starting with Dr. Dude and his excellent Ray. Dr. Dude and His Excellent Ray was originally released by Bally in 1990 and was designed by Dennis Nordman. This is a very colorful and wacky themed table in which you use Dr. Dude's Excellent Ray to turn yourself from a dweeb into a super dude. So how do you upgrade from a dweeb to a super dude? Well, there's a couple spots on the board you have to hit, the first of which is the magnetic personality, secondly, the heart of rock and roll, and thirdly, the gift of gab. Hit these targets 3 times, you'll activate the Mixmaster. Hitting the Mixmaster will activate the ray. You hit the ray, and bam, you get upgraded. And that's pretty much the whole goal of the table, is to keep repeating this process until you are a super dude. And that is the achievement for this table, is becoming a super dude. It is probably the hardest achievement to get in this pack, but it is definitely doable, especially if you're in the regular single player mode and you use power-ups. Let's jump into the enhancements. When you turn the enhancements on, obviously you're gonna get the sidewall art and a lot of extra things popping out of the table, but the most obvious addition is the addition of a fully animated Dr. Dude making exaggerated movements on the table. Might be a little bit distracting, but at least he's off to the side. The Gift of Gab box is a little bit more animated. The Mixmaster itself actually has a mixer on top of it, and as you collect the items you need to add to the Mixmaster, you can see electricity volts heading towards it, so it's a really cool effect. And then also when you activate the Excellent Ray, it zaps Dr. Dude and slowly transforms him into the character you see on the artwork on the table and the back box itself. The only weird decision made about this table in Pinball FX3, I feel, is that has to do with the alphanumeric display itself. There's 2 segments of alphanumeric characters on the backboard. You could see it very well in view number 8, where you could see it on the back box itself. But if you look at any other view, when the display shifts over into the corner so you can see it, it actually stacks it one on top of the other, and it doesn't really look right sometimes with some of the animations, although I could see why they did it, and it really doesn't affect it too much. I just think it's kind of weird to see the 2 segments one on top of another. But other than that, I really enjoyed this table. This is a fun one, very simple, straightforward thing to do. I really like going for the Excellent Ray. After the Excellent Ray, you get 2-ball multi-ball. It's always fun to juggle the 2 balls and try and shoot the ramp to get your jackpot by getting the balls bounce around the Mixmaster a certain amount of times. It's always fun. So yeah, I really do enjoy Dr. Dude and His Excellent Ray. Space Station was originally released by Williams in 1987 and was designed by Barry Ausler. And if I had my guess, this is a follow-up to 1984's Space Shuttle. It's a very similar outer space theme, but instead of focusing on 1 shuttle, we've got 2 shuttles on this table, each trying to dock with a space station. Now, if I had to guess, one of the reasons why Space Station was chosen for release on Pinball FX3 is because this is a table that was not previously released in the Pinball Arcade. Up till now, every single table had been in Pinball Arcade. This one hasn't, and to be honest, this is the very first time I've played this. I've never seen this table in real life, and I never really played it anywhere else. So I've gotten a few hours into this table, and I have to say that I really do enjoy this. Yes, it's very simple and straightforward, but there's kind of an odd quirk about it as well that I'll get into briefly. So really, the only thing there is to do on this table is to lock the balls. So with each ball you lock, it's like having a space shuttle dock with the space station. So lock 3 balls, and then you get 3-ball multi-ball right off the bat, where you immediately have to redock those ships by hitting those locked ball spots again. You do that, you get a bonus rescue, and you just keep repeating till you're down to 1 ball again, and then repeat the whole process, except this time you have to relight the locks. Another thing to add about the multi-ball is that the whole play field kind of glows green, and yes, that was a feature in the original table. And at first I thought it was some sort of enhancement that Zen Studios doing here, but no, the real table does look like that under the right lighting circumstances. So yeah, it looks really good, in Pinball FX3. The only other thing that is on this table is a bunch of standing targets that you can use to spell shuttle and station. And as far as I understand, if you spell either one of those, you get one of the awards that's lit on the table. So that, I mean, it's not really worth going for. The whole main focus is to lock the balls, get multi-ball, relock them, and repeat. As for the odd quirk with this table, there's no in-lane, so that really threw me off, because a lot of times you'll want to try to hold the ball, but if the ball kind of bounces up, what would be the in-lane, it kind of rolls up into a slingshot instead, and then just starts bouncing around again. So it can be pretty tricky to get a hold on the ball. And yeah, because of no in-lanes as well, it could be pretty difficult at times to juggle around the multi-ball and hit the shots you need to make that rescue. And that's actually the achievement for this table, is just doing a rescue. And it's certainly something that's doable with or without power-ups. But again, if you're really kind of having trouble with it, go with the power-ups and it'll be very easy. So let's move on to the enhancements. The very first thing you see with the enhancements is the astronaut that kind of floats around the table. Sometimes he does get in the way of the ball, but usually it's an animation that's done before the game starts, and it really only happens if you start it way too early. So just waiting a bit can mitigate that. But also the space station itself is fully animated and rotating. And plus now we see the two shuttles that dock with the space station as well, giving an added visual clue as to how many balls are locked on the table. And then also there's a couple other asteroids just thrown in there floating around. So yeah, they've done a really nice job adding just enough to this table without going crazy. And when you lose a ball, the astronaut gets hit by an asteroid, and it always cracks me up. Our last table is Funhouse, originally released by Williams in 1990 and designed by Pat Lawler and Larry DeMar. So I feel like everybody should be very familiar with Funhouse at this point. It was one of the earliest tables that Farsight Studios put out for the Pinball Arcade. And even before that, it was in Farsight Studios' Pinball Hall of Fame releases. And on top of that, I keep seeing this pop up at pinball conventions, and it's even at Galloping Ghost Pinball Arcade. And so I just feel like I see this table everywhere. But its popularity is one of the reasons why I believe it had to be one of the first pre-DMD tables to be released for Pinball FX3. It really is a fun table. The whole premise of the table is that the whole table itself is the funhouse, and you are the ball. And you're basically running around this funhouse, all the while Rudy, the talking mannequin head or dummy head, is yelling at you, having fun with you, until you hit enough targets to make the time proceed to 11:30. And then Rudy all of a sudden becomes angry with you because the funhouse is closing, but yet you're still in the funhouse. So you hit a couple shots, proceed the clock to midnight, and Rudy falls asleep. And then the gimmick becomes hitting the ball in Rudy's mouth to start multi-ball. And that is the achievement for this table, is just making Rudy fall asleep and then hitting the ball in his mouth to activate multi-ball. It's actually the easiest achievement there is in this table pack. He chokes on the ball a little bit and spits it out. And then the goal becomes hitting the trapdoor for jackpot, hitting the ramp to reactivate the trapdoor, and repeating. That is the basic premise of Funhouse. Of course, there's a little bit more going on. You've got the magic mirror, or the funny mirror, or whatever it was called, to activate certain modes. You've got the extra plunger on the left side for bonus shot when you activate the steps. But I don't know if I really need to go into any more of the table itself. It's very solid. I feel like everybody should be familiar with this table by this point. So I just want to jump into the added features Zen Studios added in with the enhancements turned on. And with the enhancements on, we see a whole lot of stuff added. The very first thing you might notice is the fully animated Rudy figure on the right side of the table. It seems kind of odd to me that they would have the giant Rudy head and then still another Rudy figure, but you know what? I don't know what else they were supposed to do with that. but they've also added in a whole bunch of effects, like when you hit Rudy, he becomes dizzy. They've added extra lights near the flippers that kind of threw me off at first, but then I got used to it. Of course, there's the giant hot dog they threw on the apron. And then there's a tower with a fully animated clock, so you could better see what time it actually is in the Funhouse. And they've added an extra bridge and ramp where extra balls kind of fly off the table at you in a pretty cool effect. So yeah, this is another table where the enhancements they added don't really get in the way, but little things, but there are little things that can help you, like the clock. But to be honest, I don't really pay attention to the time. It's just a fun feature. There's also a balloon that kind of floats around the back to kind of point out there's a hidden room back there behind Rudy's head. And funnily enough, when you do hit that, the balloon flies away and the Rudy head will blow up another balloon that kind of floats over there. Pretty just cool animations all the way around. But again, I feel like everybody should know this table by now. I think the Zen Studios version is very solid, and it's probably the best version of Funhouse we've seen released commercially so far. So that's a brief look at all three of the tables included in Williams Pinball Volume 6 for Pinball FX3. Now, I was looking at a little bit of complaints that people were having online regarding this table pack, and honestly, yeah, there's some issues going on, but I'm not 100% certain if these are permanent issues or if they're things that are going to be fixed over time. And the first thing is the censorship. Of course, if you're dealing with platforms like PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Switch, Pinball FX3 is rated E10+. So Zen Studios takes upon themselves to make alterations to make sure that the tables fit within those age restrictions. And with these three tables, there's actually very few changes being made, with only a handful being done on Funhouse and Dr. Dude, and absolutely nothing being changed in Space Station. But the odd thing is that on the Steam version, you're supposed to be able to disable or enable the censorship, but even when the censorship is disabled, when family mode is turned off, the censorship artwork remains. Now, I just have to assume that this is something that's going to be fixed in the future. This is something that happened previous with another table pack upon release, but then Zen Studios did fix it. So I would have to assume that these kind of changes are going to be fixed in the future. Another thing, and I thought it was just my computer. Normally I play this on my laptop connected to my TV, but I noticed I was dropping a lot of frames when I was playing it. So I switched to my main computer where things were a lot better. But some other people did leave comments saying that there were issues with, frame skipping and the frame rate dipping and game ultimately crashing. Now, I honestly did not have this game crash on me at all, but I feel like you might have to take that into account. And again, the whole 10 months it took for this to come out was, I think, primarily because of the focus on the alphanumerics, moving away from the DMD and getting that to work properly. And again, they may not have got it all working properly, but enough where it works for most people, especially with maybe higher end systems. But if you have a lower end system, keep in mind that this update may make your system chug a little bit harder, because I certainly noticed it when I was playing on my laptop, but moving to my main computer, I didn't have any issue at all. And really, I can't speak for how these games play on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, or Switch, because I'm not playing on those systems, so I couldn't tell you what it's like on there. I could just speak for what I've played on my two computers, pretty much. But ultimately, I'm happy with this, and of course I'm happy with it. I didn't pay for it. Zen Studios gave me a copy of it. But even if I had paid $10 for this, I would still be pleased with what is offered, especially since you're getting, the enhancement. I know a lot of people may not be into the whole enhancements thing, and they're trying to play these tables as realistically as possible, but honestly, I like having the option to make things less realistic, since we're playing on a platform that can't be realistic. But those are just my thoughts on this table pack and the whole situation. I'm sure that Zen Studios themselves will provide updates to fix issues in the future, And if they don't, then they don't. I don't know. That's the gamble with these kind of things. You don't know if things are going to be fixed or not. But to be perfectly honest, I do have faith that Zen Studios will fix any issues. And who knows when we will see Table Pack 7. Will it be another 10 months from now? Will it be 3 months from now? Will it be 5 years from now? I don't know. I really don't. I know a lot of people are frustrated that we had all these tables in Pinball Arcade, but then they were taken away. Especially a lot of people that were only discovering Pinball Arcade after all these tables were removed. I mean, that really sucks. Really, the best thing you could do right now is contact Zen Studios about any issues you have, any tables you want to see in the future, because they are listening. That's all I could say. And with that, we'll bring this video to a wrap. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time.